All right, we are to Revelation. Hi, Frankie, Tracy, and if you're watching us online, let us know so we can say hi to you. We're in Revelation chapter 12. Of course, we have Felicia's section to do on this, so we'll read it and then we'll read her thoughts and questions. Does anybody want to volunteer to read so you don't have to hear me the entire time?
I can read if you give me just 1 second.
Okay, thanks.
I'm reading all of chapter 12.
Yes.
Okay.
It's really not too awful long, but there's a lot in there.
I have a little helper, so hopefully it goes well. A great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant and cried out in labor and agony as she was about to give birth. Then another sign appeared in heaven. There was a great fiery red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on its head were 7 crowns. Its tail swept away a third of the stars in heaven and hurled them to the earth. And the dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth, so that when she did give birth, it might devour her child. She gave birth to a son, a male who is going to rule all nations with an iron rod. Her child was caught up to God and to his throne. The woman fled into the wilderness, where she had a place prepared by God to be nourished there for 1,260 days. Then war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon. The dragon and his angels also fought, but he could not prevail, and there was no place for them in heaven any longer. So the great dragon was thrown out, the ancient serpent, who is called the devil and Satan, the one who deceives the whole world. He was thrown to the earth, and his angels with him. Excuse me. Sorry.
Okay.
So the great dragon was thrown out, the ancient serpent who is called the devil and Satan, the one who deceives the whole world. He was thrown to earth, and his angels with him. Then I heard a loud voice in heaven say, "The salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ have now come, because the accuser of our brothers and sisters, who accuses them before our God day and night, has been thrown down. They conquered him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, for they did not love their lives to the point of death. Therefore rejoice, you heavens, and you who dwell in them. Woe to the earth and the sea, because the devil has come down to you with great fury, because he knows his time is short." When the dragon saw that he had been thrown down to the earth, he persecuted the woman who had given birth to the male child. The woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, so that she could fly from the serpent's presence to her place in the wilderness, where she was nourished for a time, times, and a half a time. From his mouth the serpent spewed water like a river flowing after the woman, to sweep her away with a flood. But the earth helped the woman. The earth opened its mouth and swallowed up the river that the dragon had spewed from his mouth. So the dragon was furious with the woman and went off to wage war against the rest of her offspring, those who keep the commands of God and hold firmly to the testimony about Jesus.
Do you have and he stood on the sand of the sea?
I do. That's
Okay.
down at my 13. Yes, thank you. The dragon stood on the sand of the sea.
Okay. I think this is a very interesting chapter, so we're gonna have to wrap our minds around it. Okay, so my Bible has this little added note for 12, verse 11. It says the first half of chapter 12 describes the battle that takes place between Satan and the angels in heaven, which ends with Satan being thrown down to the earth in utter defeat. So it's kind of a history lesson. John said that this victory comes by virtue of the blood of the Lamb, and that while Michael and his angels fight in the heavenly realm, the people also triumph over their accuser by the word of their testimony and their willingness to obey to the point of death. The blood of Jesus is the means by which God's people are spared the wrath of God and kept from the hand of the enemy. They testify to the truth that God is who he says he is, and that Jesus accomplished what he said he would, and they have accepted his gift by faith. Finally, these individuals loved not their lives unto death. God sustains his children even in the face of great suffering, thus proving they are in fact his. Just a little side note. That guy that I listen to in the morning, if I wake up really early, was talking this morning about Revelation. And he was talking about the seals. You know how I said, like, I feel like the devil's, Satan's mark is actually, we did talk about this, that I feel like it's more of like the decisions we're making and mentally like who we serve. And he was talking about the seals, you know, like how they say, like, you won't come to God unless he called you and that Jesus reveals to you. He said that's, I'm just going to order his thing and listen to it. But he said the seals are actually on us. Remember when he sealed the 144,000? Like, we don't have understanding unless he unseals our thinking to be able to understand. So I get these little sections of what he teaches, and I told Stan this morning, I said, I'm just going to order his stuff so I can listen to it, because he says some interesting things. Okay, chapter 12. This is Felicia Masonheimer's. Chapter 12 introduces a shift in the Revelation narrative. We have seen two sets of seven judgments, the seals and the trumpets. In a sense, John could have ended the book here, which I think is interesting, but instead we see an interlude from chapter 12 to 14 that gives a spiritual setting for what we saw in the first 11 chapters. So what she's saying is 12 through 14 is a review of what we saw, which I think we did read that before, that 12 and 13 would give us more information. So it's a different way to look at it. So 12 to 14 gives a spiritual setting for what we saw in the first 11 chapters. In other words, the first movement of the book shows us the physical consequences of judgment on the earth and those who choose to do evil. Which I think we talked about that too. Like, it was it was like a result of our own sin. And then the second half is God's wrath. The second movement depicts the spiritual battle between God and Satan, but undergirds those physical consequences. Rather than seeing the next few chapters as the next step in a timeline, see them as a repeating account from another angle. Rather than seeing these next few chapters as the next step in a timeline, see them as a repeating account from another angle. We are getting new insight and symbolism this time, but the principles are largely the same. Chapter 12 opens with a woman and a dragon. This dragon goes by other names throughout the Bible. The evil one, Belial, prince of the power of the air, tempter, the serpent, the accuser, and Satan. The woman is pregnant, beautifully adorned, and hotly pursued by this dragon. Read Revelation 12, 1 through 6. Describe the woman depicted in these 5 verses. What does she look like and what is she doing? Anybody?
Did you say the first 5 verses?
I'm sorry, verses 1 through 6. I feel like I did say 5 for some reason.
She was clothed with the sun, with the moon beneath her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head, and she was pregnant and in labor.
Yeah, I wonder why 1 through 6, because the 6, like 3 through 6 is the dragon. Oh, he stood before her, so he might devour the child. So she gave birth to a male child.
Well, the 12 stars are what?
Well, we'll go into that more, but
Okay.
like this is symbolism, like representing different things, like Israel and Satan, and of course, obviously, Satan is trying to get the male child that was born into Israel, which he's to rule the nations with the rod of iron. We know that's Jesus, but this child was caught up to heaven, so at the ascension, the woman fled into the wilderness. The woman, I would assume, is Israel. So she had a male child.
Mine says,
Can
the
you guys hear
seven
that?
star ready.
The banging?
That I just took my phone off mute. It might have been John.
No, it's not. They're working on the walls. I just didn't know if you guys could hear it. Go ahead.
No. The 7 stars fell with Satan, and became his demons.
Oh, that's interesting.
1/3 of all the angels in heaven fell with Satan, according to the Hebrew tradition.
Yes. I thought you were saying the 12 stars was demons.
Well, that's the stars that plunged to earth with him are usually considered to be the angels who fell with Satan and became his demons. And then they're referring to the same demons that fell with Satan, the 1/3.
Yeah, I was thinking you were talking about her crown and the 12 stars on her crown. But yes. That guy said this morning too that Satan's job in heaven was to sit at the mercy seat. So I really want to order that stuff and just hear where he's getting that from. Okay, in Catholic tradition, the woman is believed to be the Virgin Mary. Masterpieces like Virgin of the Apocalypse by Miguel Cabrera and the Immaculate Conception by Diego Velázquez portray imagery directly from Revelation 12. The dragon, the 12 stars above Mary's head, the moon under her feet. The picture that we see that done by them. There is evidence, however, that the woman in Revelation 12 represents more than just Mary. She is representative of Israel as a whole. So the woman is Israel, or some would argue Israel and the church, with Mary acting as the physical link between the two. I don't agree with that. I think it's Israel. There are some symbols in Revelation 12 of which we should take note. The moon under the woman's feet. All right, you ready? These are symbolic of dominion. The moon under the woman's feet is symbolic of dominion. The crown is symbolic of royalty. The 12 stars, this number usually connects to either the Old Testament church, tribes of Israel, or the New Testament church represented by the 12 apostles. In this case, the 12 stars correspond to Old Testament Israel, which birthed the Messiah. So to me, it's like it's Israel and Jesus came out of them, was birthed out of them. Of course, the horns are symbols of power. The heads are symbols of authority. The diadems are symbol of government. Does anybody need me to repeat those?
I do.
Okay. The moon is a symbol of dominion. Tell me when you're okay for me to move on.
Go ahead.
The crown, symbolic of royalty.
Okay.
The 12 stars, it's symbolic of Israel. Some people would say also the New Testament church. I don't know how you would, maybe I'm just not spiritually mature, but I don't know how you get the New Testament church out of that, but.
Okay.
The horn is a symbol of power.
Are you moving on to the dragon now? Or did she have a horn? She
It's
doesn't
just,
have-
it's just what it symbolizes.
Oh, okay.
The head, are you ready?
Yeah.
Horn symbol power, heads, authority.
Okay.
Diadems or diadems, diadems, symbol of government.
Okay.
Okay, it says note that because the dragon has horns, heads, and diadems, the vision indicates his power over the governments of the earth. And then she references the God of this world in 2 Corinthians 4:4. So this dragon has the horns, the heads, and the diadems. If you read verses 1-6, thinking of the narrative of the Old Testament, culminating in the story of Jesus's birth, life, death, and ascension in the Gospels, it's an astounding summary of the spiritual battle at play. Then she says to reread the passage with this in mind. What stands out to you? That's what I thought. It's like a retelling of what initially happened. You know, he was in heaven, Satan was in heaven. Israel had like all the power. I mean, God was with them. Satan got kicked out of heaven. He's very angry. He hates Israel because they're God's people. He gets kicked out of heaven. He takes a bunch of angels with him. God comes up with a plan to save the world, which is Jesus. Israel is, and so all through the Old Testament, we see him trying to interfere with the plan for Jesus. Israel gives birth. He tries to kill Jesus. He hates us if we follow Jesus. But God is going to protect her. Do you guys have any other thoughts that stand out to you?
Well, this says the wilderness represents a place of spiritual refuge, the protection from Satan.
Well, that's interesting because I always thought like a place like Petra.
Well, I guess it's, you know how it always says through beginning, it said that our souls would be protected.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say. Like you've pointed out before, and it's like we always want to go to the flesh because we want it easy.
Correct.
Verse 5 says the woman's child was caught up to God and his throne. Will someone look up Acts 1 And also someone else look up Psalm 2.
I've got Acts.
Okay, Acts 1, 6 through 11. She says, what parallels do we see between what's happening here in Acts 1, 6 through 11?
Like Psalms.
Okay, we'll get to that one next.
Acts 1, 6 to 11. So when the apostles were with Jesus, they kept asking him, Lord, has the time come for you to free Israel and restore our kingdom? He replied, the Father alone has the authority to set those dates and times, and they are not for you to know. But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you, and you will be my witnesses, telling people about me everywhere, in Jerusalem, throughout Judea, in Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. After saying this, he was taken up into a cloud while they were watching, and they could no longer see him. As they strained to see him rising into heaven, 2 white-robed men suddenly stood among them. Men of Galilee, they said, why are you standing here staring into heaven? Jesus has been taken from you into heaven, but someday he will return from heaven in the same way you saw him go.
Okay, maybe I'm slow, but the only thing I saw as a parallel was that he was taken to heaven.
Oh, Yeah.
Do you guys,
So,
would you say, Cindy?
yeah, that's all I could get out of it.
Maybe the fact he will rule the nations with a rod of iron. But I mean, I don't feel like that was paralleled
Uh-uh.
in that section. Verse 5 is what we're going to compare. The Psalm 2 at verse 5 says, she gave birth to a male child who is to rule all the nations with a rod of iron, but her child was caught up to God and to his throne. Kathy, what does Psalm 2, 1 through 9 say?
Why do the nations conspire and the peoples plot in vain? The kings of the earth take their stand, and the rulers gather together against the Lord and against his anointed one. Let us break their chains, they say, and throw off their fetters. The one enthroned in heaven laughs. The Lord scoffs at them. Then he rebukes them in his anger and terrifies them in his wrath, saying, I have installed my king on Zion, my holy hill. I will proclaim the decree of the Lord. He said to me, you are my son. Today I have become your father. Ask of me, and I will make the nations your inheritance and the ends of the earth your possession. You rule them with an iron scepter. You will dash them to pieces like pottery. And we're comparing that to what, 5?
Yeah, verse 5.
He's going to rule with an iron scepter.
That's what I got too. I think it's interesting too, because remember Satan offered him the world in the desert. Oh, also interesting. I'm reading a book on fasting. Did I tell you guys this? I'm reading this book on fasting. A human body can fast for 40 days. And I thought, isn't that interesting? Like it's a medical book I'm reading. But Satan also offered Jesus, if Jesus would come over on that side, and this is the same thing God promised him in Revelation, is the revealing of that. Anybody else see any connection there between verse 5 and Psalm 2? All right, the next section, the woman, which is Israel, or Felicia thinks could be the church, flees to the wilderness for, I guess if the church goes through the tribulation, then, well, if this is history, see, this is what I'm wrapping my mind around. So if this is history, like a retelling of history, then the church is protected also. So maybe that's where she's getting it from. Sorry, I'm just working it through in my brain. The woman, or Israel, or the church, flees to the wilderness for 1,260 days. Think back to chapter 11. How long is this period of time, and what might it represent? Do you guys remember how long it represented?
Is it 3.5 years or?
Yes. And does anybody remember what we said? The number 7 is completion, perfection. So 3.5 years we said meant
Halfway
Not
through?
done.
yeah, halfway or
Incomplete.
incomplete. All right, she says, read Revelation 12, 7 through 12. Scholars tend to see this portion of Revelation 12 as a depiction of the spiritual war after or during Christ's crucifixion. Oh, that's interesting. All right, let's read the 7 through 12. Now a war arose in heaven, and Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon. And the dragon and his angels fought back, but he was defeated, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven. And the great dragon was thrown down, the ancient serpent, who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world, and he was thrown down to earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. And I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, now the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ have come, for the accuser of our brothers has been thrown down, who accuses them day and night before our God. And they have conquered him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, for they loved not their lives even unto death. Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. But woe to you, O earth and the sea, for the devil has come down to you in great wrath, because he knows that his time is short. Did you catch that? I never thought I thought Satan was like thrown down before the world was created. Like, I don't know what I thought. Like, I never thought about that he wasn't even actually kicked out of heaven until the cross.
Yeah, I just always assumed it was long before that.
Yes, I thought it was like clear back at the beginning of time, like in the garden.
Yeah.
Well,
I never thought about it being the cross.
but what about when he was tempting him in the desert? I mean, was he still able to go back and forth at that point? Is that what you're saying? Between heaven and earth.
He's even to this point can still go into heaven because he still goes and accuses us, but he accuses us before Jesus. So prior to Jesus, he would have had free reign to go accuse us because there was nothing to cover us except for a band-aid of a sacrifice. And it wouldn't have been us, it would have been the Jews.
Well, I thought Satan is throughout the world. You hear the term devouring.
He is.
So are you saying he goes back and forth?
Oh yeah, he gets kicked out of heaven here in a little bit, like where he can't go before, because right now what he does is he goes before the throne and he's like, did you see what Cindy did? And then the Lord's like, well, I have her covered because Jesus died for your sins. So he can't come before God and accuse you because Jesus covered you.
Yeah, because
So he
I
has
thought
right
like
to go
you, he
before the
was
throne.
kicked out a long time ago.
Yeah, so
Oh.
he still has access even today to go to heaven and accuse us, but apparently when Jesus went to the cross, this is like,
Well,
I'm wrapping my mind around it.
I thought that Satan, the angel who is Satan, was kicked out of heaven, and that's when he became Satan. So
Yeah,
how could Satan have tempted Jesus if Satan wasn't Satan before the cross?
oh man, I don't know. Lord, you have to help us with this. All right, well, she has some verses for us to look up, so maybe this will help. I don't know. I'm wrapping my mind around this too. Job 1, 6 through 12. Also, who would like to take that one? Job
I got
1,
it.
6. Okay, then we have Zechariah, Zech 3.
I'll
Who
do
has that
Zachary.
one?
What is it?
Oh.
Zachariah?
Zechariah, Zech
Yeah.
3. Then we have Romans 8.
I'll do that.
Okay, and then we'll have an Exodus 16.
I'll do that.
Thank you. Okay, he
Zechariah.
says, look at
Wait a minute, Zechariah 3 what?
Zechariah 3, 1 through 5,
Okay.
Job 1, 6 through 12, and Romans 8, 1. Exodus 16, oh, big one, 1 through 15.
Okay, can you repeat them one more time? Job 1, 6, 1, 6 to 12, Zechariah,
3, 1 through 5,
okay,
Romans 8, 1, and Exodus 16, 1 through 15.
okay.
Well, Satan was the deceiver, and in Isaiah 14, it talks about how he says, "I will, I will, I will," right? So, like, was he still Satan, but not literally kicked out of heaven? Like when Jesus died on the cross, that's when all the power and authority, because he would have been Satan. He was the deceiver in the Old Testament.
Yeah, because he
It,
started
it
from
would
the
have been
very
a matter
beginning
of
with Adam and Eve.
Yeah, it would have been a matter of the power shift when Jesus, because even in that movie Nefarious, that demon there, of course, obviously a movie, but he said that their biggest mistake was the cross. They thought they killed him. So there was a shift of power at the cross for humanity. So maybe we're thinking more like kicking him out of heaven in the sense of physical again, and not so much the spiritual shift. I don't know. Let's see. Maybe some of this will make more sense. All right. It says, look at Job 1, 6 through 12. What is Satan doing, and what does he say about Job?
One day the angels came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came with them. The Lord said to Satan, "Where have you come from?" Satan answered the Lord, "From roaming through the earth and going back and forth in it." Then the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on the earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil. Does Job fear God for nothing?" Satan replied, "Have you not put a hedge around him and his household and everything he has? You have blessed the work of his hands, so that his flocks and herds are spread throughout the land. But stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face." The Lord said to Satan, "Very well then, everything he has is in your hands, but on the man himself do not lay a finger." Then Satan went out from the presence of the Lord.
So what was Satan doing?
He was trying to prove that Job would be unfaithful if he was tormented enough.
Yeah, I feel like he was saying, well, yeah, you've protected him and you give him everything, and so like he has no reason not to turn against you.
That whole story just kind of rubs me, I guess, because it's like God really doesn't need to prove his authority and the power of his, dwelling within his people, us, Job. But yet God doesn't need to prove that. I mean, so why would he have allowed all that suffering? Just I guess to be a witness to others, maybe to bring others. That's my only thing I can come up with.
My footnote here for verse 9 in Job, that passage, Satan accurately analyzed why many people trust God. They are fair weather believers, following God only when everything is going well or what they can get. Adversity destroys their superficial faith, but adversity strengthens real faith by causing believers to dig their roots deeper into God in order to withstand the storms. How deep does your faith go? Put the roots of your faith down deep into God so that you can withstand any storm you may face.
So Job, like, I think also it's like about free will. Like, he wants us to love him and serve him. And I think too, like, if I were God, I would be like, oh, Satan, this little human over here is more faithful than you. Go ahead and test him. I mean, that would be like, I don't think God's facetious like that, but like, I think because Satan was like saying that he had God's blessing, and I think that's true. Like, adversity does create deep faith. That's why I feel like too, when people are like, oh, well, just because so-and-so doesn't whatever, like, that doesn't mean they're not a Christian. Well, it doesn't, but when adversity comes, what are they standing on if they don't even know him?
It just
do you see
amazes
how-
me that Job could go through all that and still have faith. I mean, that's a lot. More,
Yeah.
I think, than what your typical person would have to go through. And
Yeah,
you know
'cause
how
even his
hard it is
friends-
for us at times.
Even his friends weren't supportive. Like, they accused him of doing something evil. So it's like, you're
Neither did his wife.
right. She survived though, didn't she?
I think I don't remember. I don't remember her dying.
I don't think he
No,
killed
because
her.
they had children again.
Mhm.
He stored her children.
But I think too, like, what to note is that he was able to go before God, even though he was Satan.
Yeah, that's I thought that too when she was reading it. I was like, isn't that something that he can go before God? And he actually was right there. He was in heaven going before God.
Well, why do you think he's so angry? Because he's not gonna stay in heaven, and there is gonna come a point where God kicks him out of heaven altogether, and that's when the war really happens.
So he can't go back and forth anymore after the cross. Is that what you're saying?
No, he can. He still can, but now Jesus is our intercessor.
Oh.
So like here where he went right to God and God said, well, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, just roaming the earth, looking for something to do. And God said, oh, well, what about like now when he goes to heaven, Jesus is between him and God on our behalf. I like that adversity creates deep faith, Kathy. Okay,
Yeah.
here's Zechariah 3:1-5. What is Satan doing in Zechariah 3:1-5?
I have that one. The angel showed me Jeshua, the high priest, standing before the angel of the Lord, the accuser, Satan. So this sounds like the high priest standing before the angel of the Lord.
Satan.
Satan, yeah, that's what it sounds like. Was there at the angel's right hand? Oh, Satan was there at the angel's right hand making accusations against Jeshua. And the Lord said to Satan, I, the Lord, reject your accusation, Satan. Yes, the Lord has chosen Jerusalem, rebukes your accusations, rebukes you. This man is like a burning stick that has been snatched from the fire. Jeshua's clothing was filthy as he stood before the angel. So the angel said to the other standing there, take off his filthy clothes. And turning to Jeshua, he said, see, I've taken away your sins and now I'm giving you these new fine clothes. Then I said, they should also place a clean turban on his head. So they put a clean priestly turban on his head and dressed him in new clothes while the angel of the Lord stood by. All right, hold on. Then the angel showed me Jeshua. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Would you spell it for me?
Jeshua.
Oh,
My Bible
Jeshua.
says Joshua.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's
Really?
another name for Joshua, which is another name, I think, for Jesus, isn't it? Accusing. Okay, so he was
Anyway.
accusing.
Wait, the high priest was standing before the angel of the Lord, period. The high priest was standing there. The accuser, Satan, was there at the angel's right hand, making accusations against Jeshua. And the Lord said to Satan, so it was the angel of the Lord that took off his filthy rags and put a clean turban on him.
Yeah.
Satan was just there as the accuser. I had myself confused when I read that at first.
I don't even remember ever reading that before.
Well,
I mean, I'm
shame
sure
on you.
I know. Any thoughts?
That's in Zechariah where Stan said we should go.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing. I'm like, okay, Lord, are you telling us as we go there next? How many chapters
I
is
don't
that?
understand the significance of that. I don't get it.
Well, Satan was there accusing Jeshua before the Lord, before God. God rejected Satan's accusation and cleaned him up. That's what I
Okay,
read down.
okay.
So once
Look at
again,
your-
it's kind of good.
Kimmy, look at your footnote there under 3,
Oh.
1 through 3. It said that yet God revealed his mercy, stating that he chooses to save his people in spite of their sin. Satan is always accusing people of their sins before God. And that references us back to Job 1:6. But he greatly misunderstands the breadth of God's mercy.
I just,
And the accuser will ultimately be destroyed. Revelation 12:10 is where we're at right now.
Is
So
that
this-
because though Jeshua and Job were both faithful, or that they received God's mercy?
I feel like we need to go to Zechariah to find out more about Jeshua next. But I think
this says that
is
that Jeshua represents the nation of Israel.
mm,
So if these were people Satan was accusing that weren't faithful, they wouldn't receive the same grace.
well, I think if Jeshua represents Israel, Satan's accusing them. Now that even makes it more interesting that there's an angel. Who's the angel? Who's that angel representing? Like why with Job there I mean, not that it matters, but I think what she's pointing out here is that Satan had access to God and is our accuser.
Then my footnote, Chrissy, for 5-7 or 5-7. The Greek name for Jeshua is Jesus, meaning
Okay.
the Lord saves. He is seen here as a symbol of Jesus, the Messiah.
Jeshua is?
That's what this says. 5-7. The footnotes on 5-7.
Says that Jeshua here is seen as Jesus, the Messiah?
Well, he also represented Israel earlier, and now he's represented. All right, I agree. We need to go to Zechariah next.
Okay. All in agreement, say aye. Aye. Linda's there. I thought you disappeared, Linda. Okay, reread Revelation 12:10-12. Says, and I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, now the salvation and the power and it's saying, why should we rejoice? That's the question. And then I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, now the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and authority of his Christ have come, for the accuser of our brothers. The accuser of our brothers has been thrown down, who accuses them day and night before our God. And they have conquered him by the blood of the Lamb, which would have been the cross, and by the word of their testimony, for they loved not their lives even unto death. Why should we rejoice? Oh,
Well,
wait,
it
I gotta
says-
read one more verse. Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you will dwell in them. But woe to you, O earth and sea, for the devil has come down to you in great wrath, because he knows that his time is short. Sorry, Kim, were you saying something?
He, accuser of our brothers, has been thrown down from heaven onto earth. He accused them day and night before our God. Who was he? Who's them?
Us.
Okay.
But here we have that blood of the Lamb being the overcomer.
Well, you know what
This
I
is
think
re-
is weird? I don't get is God doesn't need Satan to be pointing out things that and accusing us or anybody. I mean, because God's all knowing and all present. And so why is there such a emphasis on Satan as the accuser? It just doesn't make sense to me.
Because he's like a roaring lion trying to devour us from day one. He wants us to follow him. He doesn't want us to.
But
And
like
he
he
does
thinks
everything he can to ruin us.
like he thinks he's telling God stuff he doesn't already know. I don't know.
Well, I think it's about our free will. Like, I think it's about, because Satan cannot make you do anything that you don't give him allowance for. So when people say, well, Satan made me do it, it's not Satan making you do it. It's coming from
Right.
inside of you. And of thousands of years of observing humans, he knows how to manipulate us. But I think what God is doing is he's got these humans that he created, and they have this free will, and we can choose to be obedient and go to heaven, or we can choose to not be obedient and go to hell. You know what I mean? It's like he could force us all,
Yeah,
but then what would be the point?
but I understand all that, but he accused them day and night before our God. Well, God already knew. He already knows. He already knows everything we do.
Well, and I think that's the thing, like Christians, we are forgiven. So when he goes to accuse us, Jesus is like, I already covered that. Like when we go to heaven, we're going to get our level of reward, not punishment.
Yeah.
It's going to be the earth dwellers that go to the great white throne judgment and are going to get the punishment. So Satan wants to take as many of us with him as possible.
Well, Romans 8:1. So now there is no condemnation for those who belong to Christ Jesus.
So Satan stops accusing. I guess so. My point is, why is Satan going to God with his accusations though, when God already knows? Like God doesn't need Satan to be the accuser. Is that what it's that this is saying he stops being the accuser? Like because okay, yeah, maybe I'm reading too much into it.
No, I get what you're saying. Yeah, I get it. I don't know.
Because God knows, like, why is he even the accuser when God already knows? Like, what's the point of Satan going before God and being the accuser? I get our free will and I get all that, but Satan is the accuser. Why? When God is all knowing. He didn't need Satan to be the accuser. Why didn't he just say, just get out of here? I don't need you.
What I'm
Well,
reading
maybe-
in my footnotes, Kim, it says, the name Satan means accuser. when he's doing that, when he's going before God and saying, look at these people doing this, those people are probably feeling his attack. He's attacking us.
Yeah.
Look
And,
at your
not everybody's gonna be saved. That like I was thinking, like, we're thinking just on the Christianity side of it, but what about the people that aren't Christians?
He
And
already
he
has
Is
goes-
it a
them.
testing?
He
Is it a
already has.
testing?
Say it again, Janet.
Is it a testing for us? What we're gonna do with it?
I don't know. I just felt like, is he only accusing Christians, or is he accusing humans? And some are under the covering of Jesus and some aren't. And if that's the case, then is the consequences of someone who's not under the Lord or under the blood or the testimony or the cross, are they free access? Like, I don't know.
Okay,
This
so
says he actively looks for people to attack. Satan likes to pursue believers who are vulnerable in their faith, who are spiritually weak, or who are isolated from other believers. Even though God permits the devil to do his work in this world, God is still in control.
yeah,
So
because
he's trying to trip us up.
so God is fully aware of what non-believers are doing and thinking and their intentions and the condition of their heart, as well as believers, correct?
Yeah, I would assume.
Okay, I thought so too. But they're not covered until they,
Sign the bottom line.
correct? So somehow, yeah. So, yeah.
Well, I liken it to, my favorite Psalm is 139. And when God knew us in our womb, he knows when you sit down and stand up, et cetera, et cetera. And so I liken it, he knows our whole path and how things end up. And I liken it to, like, if we're going through a crisis or whatever, even a celebration, we don't know what's happening 10 years from now, but he does.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard for us to just rest in him with an issue or whatever. And because, we're in the here and now, and he may not answer right away, but he does in his time. Like he already knows what's going on with all of us. And it comes back to what Chrissy was saying, the choice. Do we choose to give up, go back to Job? Do we choose to give up, or do we rest in him and remain faithful? But I get what you're saying. God, he knows with Satan.
So why is Satan the accuser? Why does he allow? I don't understand that relationship of Satan being the accuser when there's no need for that, because God already knows. Like Satan doesn't need to go to God and look at what Job's doing, look what Kim's doing, look what so-and-so's doing. Like he didn't need that because he already knows. I just didn't understand.
Yeah. Well, I think too, like I'm thinking, even to the effect of like our job as Christians, like we are to be praying. We are to be, if Satan can keep us from walking in the full power of what God has for us, you know what I mean? Like his job is to destroy. He loves that we kill 62 million babies a year because God loves those babies and God created those babies. You know what I mean? Like his job is destruction. And as Christians, like I feel like we are under trial a lot in our faith, like if Satan weren't here to accuse and to tempt us and to create havoc, and but I think also that like I don't know, I think Lori read about like weak Christians and Christians whose faith is little or whatever. It's like Satan wants us to be miserable, and he will do it if he can. And I think part of that, I think like part of that accusing and part of like his job and purpose is, how much are we going to allow? Because God has given us privileges that we don't even use, like prayer.
I'm kind of getting an image of a parent who has 2 children or 3 or 4 or whatever. And I mean, parents generally know what's going on in the house and the personalities of all the children, but there's usually one kid that's always pointing his finger at the other mom. So and so is doing the tattletale kid, and okay, so maybe Satan just for some reason thinks it he's just so full of himself that he can't help himself. But so maybe that name, the accuser, really isn't significant at all. That's just his title. That's just his, had a way to describe him, because he's always being the tattletale and pointing his finger, and God doesn't care.
That's a great analogy. That
I-
is,
Yeah.
that's good.
Maybe God just was helping me understand that.
Well, and I'm thinking too, like, what if you had that one child and you decided to disown that child, but all the other million children you love, or they have an opportunity for you to love them? Like that rebellion of like, oh, well, you don't love me and I'm not going to get to heaven. Well, they're not going to heaven either. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Maybe I think that was a good analogy too, Kim.
Yeah, and the parents like, I love them anyway. Like, I get it. I thank you. You're not supposed to be a tattletale. Like, I got this.
Talk to the hand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Well,
But
we are
Satan,
past
Satan
time.
has taken it so far that now God has said, you will never be in heaven. You're going to be in
Yeah.
hell. So he's
Yeah.
even more ticked off because he knows he doesn't even have that opportunity that the other children now have.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hate. I mean, if you just look at humans that are hate and just jealousy and covet, all of those things that just make us so ugly. They don't want anybody else to be happy because
Oh
they're not
wow.
happy.
And that's just like so Satan has just given in so completely to his condition of hate and evil and everything that he is, he's blinded. He's just completely, totally, forever blinded, and that's where he'll stay. And isn't that, I guess that's why maybe as God's children we're instructed not to do that to other people, because he doesn't want anybody else to be like Satan. We're to forgive and love and keep trying to bring you back into the fold, and and it's hard to be gracious and merciful as God is when yeah
Pretty deep stuff.
it is.
All right. Well, I didn't make it all the way through Felicia, so we'll pick back up on Felicia tomorrow. Thanks for
I
hanging in
didn't,
there. We're about 6 minutes late.
I didn't even realize what time it was.
All right, this concludes the reading of God's word for today, and we'll pick back up at tomorrow on finishing off Felicia, and then we'll go into the commentaries. Wow, I just like so much to think about. Bye, Merrick. Bye-bye. See you guys later.
Bye.